Okay, apologies for the late start. I'll try and speak a little bit faster to compensate. Okay, so today we're looking at Putnam on meaning and reference, and this general question Putnam has about whether your psychological states fix the references of your psychological terms. And what I want, bear with me. What I want to bring out today is that it's something about the way in which causal theories of reference bear on our knowledge of our own psychological states. So I want to begin with some remarks about what for most of us is probably the classical, the best known picture of your knowledge of your own mental states, Descartes, and then say something about how a causal picture of reference really blows up that kind of view of knowledge of your own mental states. So here's Descartes in the throes of his doubt. What shall I now say that I am? I mean, you can hear he's a bit excited at this point. What shall I now say that I am when I am supposing that there is some supremely powerful and, if it is permissible to say, malicious deceiver who is deliberately trying to trick me in every way he can? So the picture there is, you don't have any knowledge of the physical world at all. You don't have any knowledge of the world around you at all. It might all be a dream, it might all be a hallucination, you might have gone mad, there might be this deceiver getting at you. So what can you say about yourself? What kind of knowledge do you have of yourself in that situation? Do you have any knowledge of yourself in that situation? Well, it says, can I now assert that I possess even the most insignificant of attributes, which I have just said belong to the nature of a body? So you don't, I mean, obviously you can't, because if it's all a dream, if it's all a hallucination, then your body is just as much part of that hallucination as anything else. But still, he says, in such a situation, you still know that you exist, and you still know, therefore, of some of your own characteristics. So which of your own characteristics do you have knowledge of in that situation? And here in this famous passage, he says, at last I have discovered it, thought. Thought alone is inseparable from me. It might all be a dream, I might not know anything about what's going on out there, but still I know about my own thoughts. I have some kind of special authority in my knowledge of my own mind. So if you think what's going on here, it's being supposed that if you consider someone plunged in thought, then they might not have certain knowledge of what is going on around them. But still, when you survey your own mind, you first of all know whether you're thinking, and secondly, you know what you're thinking. And that's a very intuitive, appealing idea. I might not know much about what's going on out there, but still, surely I can survey and know about what's going on in here. Now, knowing whether you're thinking and knowing what you're thinking, well, if you don't know about what's going on out there, then you don't know whether your thoughts refer. Right? That's all right. If I don't know whether Sally exists, then I don't know whether my thoughts about Sally refer. So if I know whether I'm thinking in this situation, the meaning doesn't depend on reference, because my thought has significance, whether or not there's any reference for it. Right? That's all right? Yeah, because the reference is something out there, something physical. The meaning, the thought, is something you know about, whether or not the physical is there. And if you know what you're thinking, then presumably, you know, if you have a thought here, now, and you have a thought then you know whether it's the same thought. If you know which thoughts you're having, then you must know whether it's the same thought you're having, here's there, now is then. So knowing what, I mean, that's all, it must come to at least that, you know whether it's the same thought again. But if you have a causal theory of reference, if you have a causal theory as to what is giving content to the thoughts that you're having, then that challenges that picture. Because on a causal theory of reference, it's only the physical stuff out there that is giving significance to your thoughts. So if that stuff is not there, if you can't have meaning without reference, and the causal theory seems to suggest that you can't have meaning without reference, if there's no reference, then there's no causal chain, and nothing to give meaning to your thoughts, then you don't actually have authoritative knowledge of whether you're even thinking. There might not be anything out there to be giving your thought causal significance if you can't have meaning without reference, as the causal theory suggests. And if, as I've suggested a few times, on a causal theory of reference, you can't really tell infallibly whether it's the same thought you're having again or not, because the sameness of thought requires the sameness of the object out there generating the thought. And you can't know about that just by surveying some internal domain, any more than you can know just by surveying the pixels in two photographs, whether or not they are shots of one and the same thing. So the causal theory of reference really seems to blow up that picture of the mind as an internal domain that you can survey without having any knowledge of the physical world around you and have authoritative knowledge of, independently of your knowledge of the physical world. Okay? I'll elaborate that point. I mean, that's putting it very abstractly and schematically. I'll try and give some examples in a moment, but that's just to state schematically the general connection between the causal theory of reference and what picture you have of your knowledge of your own mind. It really seems to blow up the Descartes' classical picture. I do think that's true. Okay? Straightforward enough? Yes? He knew more. So if this is Descartes, yeah, just doing that, which is what Descartes is doing, right? He's got his eyes shut, as you can see. He's getting knowledge of more than his mind. Right. I see you might say that, and in fact you have to say that if you're going to hold on to Descartes' line. You could say, well, you couldn't really hold on to Descartes' line exactly, because Descartes' line was, I give up my knowledge of the physical world, but I still have knowledge of what's going on in here. You're saying, I can get my knowledge of the physical world from my knowledge of what's going on in here. That seems a little bit weird, doesn't it? I mean, if you're just sitting by the fire, Descartes could have thought, I'm just sitting by the fire thinking about Sally. But I couldn't be thinking about Sally on the causal theory of reference, unless Sally existed. So Sally must exist, right? You were wondering if Sally was merely imaginary. if she was just one of your constellation of imaginary friends. And then you thought, no, I couldn't even have this thought in the causal theory of reference unless Sally existed. So Sally must exist. You say metaphysical causation? Uh-huh. Right. Causation in itself, yes. Yeah. That's right, that's right. The causation itself is what's required for knowledge. But the causal theory of reference seems like a kind of a priori theory. I mean, Descartes could just have read Kripke. You see what I mean? Said, boy, that's right, the causal theory. Therefore, given that I know that I'm thinking about water, there must be such a stuff as water. It can't all be a dream. Okay, I'm just stating it. I actually think that's an important view, and I actually mean to discuss that line next time. Yeah. Absolutely. No, I think it's an important line of reasoning to pursue. Okay. Okay. So I want to cut to another part of the forest for a second and look at what Putnam says about natural kinds, and then look at how a Putnamian or Kripkean theory of names of natural kinds bears on these points about self-knowledge. I also want to, when I come to this section 3, I want to suggest a slightly different way of reading Putnam to the way I had last time. I think both these strands of thought are in Putnam's article, so I already set out one, I'll set out the other now. Okay, what's a natural kind? The idea of a natural kind is the idea of a distinction that's out there in the world independently of what anyone thinks. So some classifications are projected onto the world by us. Out there in the real world, there's just a whole bunch of atoms buzzing around, and lots of the distinctions that we make between different kinds of collections of atoms are just projected by our own interests. I mean, the distinction between something that's interesting and something that's not interesting is presumably entirely relative to what your interests are. It's a projection of your own interests onto the world out there. Yes? That's okay. But then you think, well, there are classifications of the world out there that don't depend on any of us in that way. And really isn't what science is doing, is trying to discover what distinctions there are in the world out there, independent of any of us, independent of you or me. So the idea of a natural kind is the idea of a classification that's out there in the world independently of us, and we are just trying to get onto it. And when scientists made a distinction between things that have electrical charge and things that don't have electrical charge, they weren't saying, well, we find this, we project this onto the world. They were saying, that's out there, and we are trying to find out about this distinction. So for a distinction like that, how you find out about it is one thing, and what it is intrinsically is another. It's not your interests that determine what the distinction is, rather the distinction's out there, and you're trying to get onto it. Does that make sense? Yeah. The general picture I suggested for natural kinds last time was you have a set of symptoms, as with a disease, you have a set of symptoms of being this kind of thing, and then you postulate there's some underlying structure, something out there in the world independent of you that is producing those symptoms. So I give an example of gold in Archimedes, where Archimedes takes it for granted that what it is for something to be gold is not a matter particularly of how it strikes anyone, how it looks. It's a matter of having the structure that typically underlies that kind of behavior, the behavior that gold things exhibit, solubility, ductility, solubility and aqua regia, ductility, malleability, and so on. All the stuff that gold does. There's something out there that explains that. We don't know what it is, but we assume that there's some structure out there in the world. And similarly for all the chemical substances, and presumably for lots of names of substances and lots of names of animals. So you usually think of the essence of a substance as a characteristic that explains the symptoms by which we usually detect the presence of the kind. So there's that rough common sense folk notion of gold, or of what it is to be a tiger, but we don't take that as definitive. We assume that something could have all those characteristics, but not really be gold, or not really be a tiger. And even if we don't actually know what the essence is, you can improve your use of the symptoms by which you test for its presence. I mean, Archimedes found a better test for the presence of gold. If you're a physician looking for cases of Legionnaire's disease, you might not know what the virus is that produces Legionnaire's disease, but you might think, well, maybe there's a presence of a particular hormone in the body that actually really indicates that you have Legionnaire's disease. You might think you can find better and subtler symptoms of having Legionnaire's disease, even though you don't know yet what the particular virus is. So the, how should I say, the poster child, the paradigmatic example of this kind of thing is chemistry and the periodic table. So the periodic table is important because of the periodic law, and the periodic law says the chemical properties of an element are a periodic function of its atomic number. So what that's telling you, what that seems to be telling you is, if you want to know what the outward properties are of an element, the way the thing behaves seems to be dictated by its atomic number. Right? So if it's exhibiting all these particular S1 to S4, then you say the atomic number is what drives that behavior, that the element behaves the way it does. So that seems to give you a very clear case of this kind of thing. What you can say with gold, it looks like, for all the properties that we're interested in of gold, if you ask why does it have those characteristics, why is it soluble in aqua regia, then ultimately the answer is going to have something to do with it having the particular atomic number it does. So that seems to give you a very clear case where here are all the substances, and there are all their essences cleanly laid out in a structured table. You could push it a little bit further and say that works for compounds too. On Earth, what's playing that role is the H2O molecule. That's what explains why water dissolved stuff has the boiling point and melting point that it does, and so on. On twin Earth, it's XYZ that explains why the substance has those characteristics. That's why you say it's a different substance on Earth than on twin Earth. It's a little bit more complex when you start talking about biological kinds. I mean, the names of animals. If you take tiger and say, well, something behaves, well, suppose you have all the characteristics of being a tiger, which I'm not really an expert, but I assume that they include these ones, right? And you say, well, why is it that this thing exhibits these characteristics? I guess the DNA structure has something to do with it. But with biological species, it's not nearly as clean cut as it is with chemistry. There's no biological analogue of the periodic table. You don't get all the species nicely laid out in some great hierarchy like that. In fact, DNA structure alone can't possibly be what does it, because the notion of a species has a, how should I say, a kind of historical component to it, so that it has to do with members of the species, all being sprung from the same stock, all having the same kind of history, having been generated. I mean, tigers on Mars that exhibited this kind of structure had that very DNA. They still wouldn't be tigers. At the best, they'd be Martian tigers. They're not real tigers. They're a different species than Earth tigers. They have nothing to do with them evolutionarily. So even in biology, the case is a little bit more complex than it is in chemistry. It's harder to know just how you pin down and say what the essence of a biological kind is. It's not good enough just to, I mean, DNA structure might vary between members of the same species, and after all, a species can split into two, so a straightforward historical picture of what's going on with biological species doesn't sound very plausible either. But on the other hand, when you talk about a species like tiger or elephant or whatever, then you're not just talking about whatever has these outward characteristics. You're not just saying if it's stripy, got claw, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck and all that, then it is a duck. That's really not true. I mean, that's the point about that remark. It's just false. You could have something that looked for all the world like a duck, but was just not a duck. It didn't spring from the right stock. It didn't have the right kind of biological material in it. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, but it's actually made of metal and built in Taiwan, then it is not a duck. You see what I mean? We just don't use the notion of a duck like that. And similarly, you could have a tiger that was not at all ferocious, didn't have 4 feet, didn't have claws, wasn't striped. Yeah, so we don't actually treat tiger or duck or these other notions as if they just have to do with the superficial characteristics that everybody knows about. We talk as if tiger or duck are pointing you to some internal structure that we don't yet know about, even though it's very difficult to say what it is. I mean, whatever you say exactly about the biological species, they're very different to classifications like beautiful or well-designed, cool, or gives me a strange Ripley feeling. I mean, if you take a classification like gives me a strange Ripley feeling, and that's called, could there be a ringer for that? Could there be something that it strikes me just like something that gives me a strange Ripley feeling? I get all the Ripley feelings all right, but it doesn't really give me a strange Ripley feeling. That doesn't make any sense. You see what I mean? The classifications like that, there isn't any hidden essence. There isn't any underlying structure that's the thing you're really talking about. You're not even trying to get at that. You can't have something that really looks just like something beautiful, is a dead ringer for something beautiful, but it's not really beautiful. How could that be? Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. So classifications like that aren't natural kinds. Classifications like the names for biological species, they don't have that nice tidy structure of the periodic table, but in our ordinary thinking about biological species, we're trying to get at something like that, something out there independent of us. Psychiatric classifications are a really interesting, difficult case here. I take schizophrenia, take the classification as someone is schizophrenic or not schizophrenic. Is that a concept where it would be right to say if it looks like a duck and talks like a duck and so on? It is. I mean, the symptoms of schizophrenia, there's a usual list, things like delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech, disorganized behavior, flattening of affect, just not being very excited about anything, a kind of passivity. Well, would it be right to say that that's what schizophrenia is? That anything that exhibits those characteristics, that's what we mean by a schizophrenic patient? Well, actually, nobody talks like that. Nobody thinks that you can define schizophrenia in terms of, well, nobody's a strong word. Most people don't think you can define schizophrenia just in terms of these explicit behavioural signs and say anything that exhibits them, that's a schizophrenic. And if you don't exhibit just those signs, then you're not a schizophrenic. These are at best guides to whether someone is schizophrenic. But on the other hand, I mean, people have sometimes had the dream that when we know enough about the brain, it will turn out that there's a set of brain structures like having brain disturbance 34, having brain disturbance 33, there will be a kind of periodic table of the psychiatric disorders where you can look at all these different brain disturbances and see them arrayed in a kind of periodic table of the things that can go wrong with your brain, with these kinds of symptoms being seen as the consequences of that. And that doesn't seem actually to be at all what is going to happen. It's a very untidy picture of what is going on, what is different about the brain of someone with schizophrenia from a healthy patient, a healthy person. And there isn't going to be some nice structure there as you get to the periodic table. That seems to be a fantasy. So these are very difficult cases, psychiatric disorders. Our ordinary talk seems to want to point to something beyond the outward symptoms and say, but this is what it is really. But on the other hand, when you say, well, what is the underlying virus going to be? What is the underlying structure going to be? It doesn't seem right to say there's going to be any underlying any organised underlying structure there. So the distinction between natural kinds and things that are not natural kinds, there are lots of very difficult cases there. Chemistry in the periodic table is the clear case, the model that you wish everything else was like, but everything else doesn't live up to the model. But on the other hand, there is certainly something right about that picture of a set of symptoms for which we want to find something distinctive underlying them. One way to think of it is that if you've got a natural kind notion, then it should be possible to make predictions. I mean, with suppose you take that example that came up last time of mud. If you know a bit about mud, and you say, well, all the mud I've encountered so far has been in Berkeley, then could it possibly be right to do an induction and say, well, therefore all mud is in Berkeley? I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? I mean, the characteristic... How should I say, there's nothing deep about, well, that's not quite what I mean. There's nothing deep about mud, I mean, because of course sometimes is. But what I mean is, being mud is just a matter of having certain superficial characteristics, and you're not going to get any generalization about what's true of all mud beyond the possession of these characteristics. On the other hand, if